You open your laptop and spend 20 minutes looking for that one file that should have taken 30 seconds to find. Or you finish uploading that video that took days to produce, but you have no idea what to do next. That's not a productivity issue, that's a systems problem. Most content creators put all their focus on the content, but no energy whatsoever into the behind the scenes business systems. I literally spent thousands of dollars on YouTube courses trying to find shortcuts to better content. But what I figured out the hard way is that you don't necessarily need a better content idea. You need a better content operating system, production workflows, solid file and folder structures, and the weekly admin sessions to not just stay on top of things, but to actually get ahead. Fix those three pain points, and content creation stops feeling like a chaotic full time job, and instead it'll run like a system that doesn't need you to be in it 24/7. And it all starts with a three-step content pipeline taking you from idea to upload week after week without the usual chaos. Before we dive into the three-step pipeline, I want to talk about why content creation can feel so overwhelming and chaotic if it's not managed right. To be fair, most creators don't have a workflow problem. They simply try to fix the wrong thing, like getting better at editing or spending time and money on their studio setup. So here's what actually breaks most content workflows. Three failure points, which almost always show up in the same sequence, by the way. Number one is not having an idea vault or a database. An idea I have in the shower is not captured as long as I don't write it down properly. Meaning, it has to go into a content database of some sort, not on a sticky note into a notes app on my phone or on a to do list for 3 weeks from now. That's simply not good enough. All ideas need to go to the same place. Otherwise, I have to remember where I put them. And memory is a terrible database. The moment ideas live outside your head, content creation becomes scalable. Failure point two is the script gap, and it looks like this. Most creators go from a vague idea directly to filming. Maybe they wrote down a few bullet points, but there is no structured script. And then they wonder why recording takes 6 hours and still doesn't feel right at the end. Fact is, the quality of my output is a direct function of the quality of my input. Garbage in, garbage out. So when the preparation improves, the entire creative experience changes downstream. Step one of the content pipeline is going to fix that in a minute. But let's finish off with failure point number three. It's not having an upload SOP. So creators who don't have a standard operating procedure, and unfortunately that's most creators, they're making decisions during the upload process. What tags should I use? What description should I write? Did the pinned comment get posted? And what about the thumbnail? Every one of those decisions is a potential failure point in itself. Not because I'll get them wrong all the time, but because I'm relying on memory again at the end of the production process. Working without a standard operating procedure or at least a checklist is a system design error, not a discipline error or even a character flaw. Fact is, most content creators don't need more motivation, they need better systems. Follow the steps, get consistent results. It's literally that simple. So, with that out of the way, let's talk about the three-step system now. Here's the structure: ideate, produce, distribute. Plain and simple. 3 steps. Every video on this channel moves through all three in sequence. No skipping, no combining, no, I'll just record it and figure out what I do later. One after the other. The structure removes any form of decision fatigue I have before it can even slow me down. And generally speaking, I follow three rules which are non negotiable. Every video can only be in one stage at any given time. That's rule one. Personally, I use tags to color code the folders on macOS, and I have each of the stages broken down a bit more. That way, I quickly see the status of each video or project. Not to write and to shoot, and not to shoot and to edit, because if a video is in 2 stages, the pipeline would have a design error that needs fixing. The only exception to the color coding is scheduled and live, because here both can happen at the same time. For instance, with a short that's already published, but the long form video only comes out a few days from now. Rule number two is that each stage has a defined input and a defined output. So I cannot start the to edit phase without the input that the to shoot phase produces. And rule 3 is nothing lives in my head. Everything is documented because if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, someone else has to sit down, open the folders, and know exactly where every video is in the pipeline. That's the standard. Not I know where everything is, but the system knows where everything is. Right. So let's talk about the first step then. Ideate. To me, this has nothing to do with being in a creative mood. It's not a brainstorm session I run whenever I feel like it. It's a structured approach or a structured concept and a research process that runs when it's time to run it, meaning before it's time to shoot the next video. I simply ask myself 3 questions. Is there demand, or in other words, does this idea or keyword have enough search volume to make production worthwhile at my current channel size? Question 2 is the competition beatable? So, can my channel realistically rank on this keyword right now, or am I going up against channels with a decade head start and a million of subscribers? And number 3 is, does it fit the cluster? Does this idea serve the same audience and reinforce the same channel positioning as my other content? Or is it an interesting tangent that will attract the wrong subscribers? If the answer to any of those is no, the idea stays in the idea database for now. But simply because an idea doesn't pass today doesn't mean it's not the right call 6 months from now. When the answer is yes, there is demand, the search volume is good, and it fits into the channel right now. Then I sit down and plan out the idea. That removes the what should I make this week friction from every other week of the month. I want to have content prepared in advance so that I don't need to rush the shooting and editing every single week, which means I tend to plan content in clusters, not in individual videos. So every piece of content supports the next instead of competing with it. A cluster in this case is a keyword family, a core topic with enough search volume and subtopics to support 3 to 5 long form videos and a number of shorts, so that each individual video is an item inside the cluster, not an independent decision. Here's an example. This video is part of a content cluster that we can call the Creator Operating System. The cluster has 4 videos, 3 individual topics, and 1 compilation of all 3 parts. Each video is one part of a big picture idea, which in this case is that content creators need to run a system instead of winging their uploads. Now, this video specifically is split in 3 sections: an introduction, a core idea, or the 3 step content pipeline, and a close. Each section is broken down into 3 subsections or parts, and the other videos have a similar structure to give them the same feel and the same editing workflow. And this is important for the long form compilation at the end, where all 3 parts become one with a fresh hook in the outro. Long story short, the key message is that I sat down to map the entire cluster before shooting a single frame. And this is the point where we have to talk about doing some research. When I started out, I just sat down, pressed record, and talked about things I wanted to talk about, not necessarily what you wanted to hear about. So that got frustrating really fast because subscribers didn't come in and the numbers didn't improve. So I started to do more and more research, and since then it has become part of the ideation step to check a few things before I go off on a tangent. Because this is what sets successful YouTubers apart from everyone else. Going at it strategically by doing research and not just shooting topics from the hip like there's no tomorrow. Everything else that comes after is influenced by the research: the title, the thumbnail, description, the tags, and so on. Generally speaking, I like to cover 3 fields while doing research. One is keyword research, the exact search term I'm targeting, not a topic, not a broad theme, the precise keyword phrase. For example, for this video, the target keyword phrase is content creation workflow. Next, I look into the outcome. You, as the viewer, what's your pain point before you watch this video? Not, hey, they struggle with content planning. That's a category. The pain state is more precise like that. They spend 30 minutes every week deciding what to shoot next, then second guess the decision throughout the entire production process, and still aren't sure if they made the right call when they hit publish. That's being a precise pain state. Being specific here determines how accurately my hook will land. And last but not least, I think about systems. How can I turn the topic into a system that delivers a certain outcome? Now, in this video, the system is a three-step content pipeline. Naming it serves two functions. First, it gives you a mental model to retain, and second, it forces me to structure my script before I've written a single word. A name system is remembered, a collection of tips is not. Every once in a while, I top this up with competitor research as well. See what other people in the same niche are doing. Although I don't like to focus that much on it because we quickly get into a situation where I start copying what other people do and measure myself against their numbers. And now that I talk about it, I realize I haven't mentioned that I use vidIQ for the ideation step these days. It turns my ideas into scripts, helps me do keyword research, and check out what other people in my niche are doing. Most importantly, though, it helps me with step 3 of the content pipeline, the packaging part of the distribution. I'm talking thumbnail, titles, description, tags, and so on. Everything I need to publish a video like this. And we're going to talk about that step in a moment. For now, I want to acknowledge something. If you've never run a structured content pipeline before, this might feel like a lot of work for what it is on the surface, just making a YouTube video. So here's my blunt opinion. You don't have the time not to run this system. Every time you produce a video from scratch, you're spending hours on logistics that the pipeline can handle in 45 minutes. Multiply that across a year of content creation, and we're talking about a major inefficiency with a very clear cost. Once you start using the three-step content pipeline, every video after is cheaper to produce and more consistent in output quality. And consistency is what ultimately transforms creators into trusted brands. That being said, most creators don't actually need more motivation. They need better operational systems during this transition. And that's exactly why I created my one-page solopreneur operating system. It gives you a structure for running your business, content, and workflows with more clarity and less chaos. Link is in the description below. All right, we're ready to produce now. Step 2 of the three-step content pipeline. It's time to shoot some footage, edit the videos, and then package them up for publication. As someone who has recorded more than one video without the mic being turned on, or the camera for that matter, I've learned that I need a checklist for shooting. I can't emphasize enough how much time this saves me today, especially because I still adjust my video gear every now and then. The moment I put my mic in a different spot, it's easy to forget to turn it on. So I run through a video recording checklist to make sure everything is set up properly. We're talking AC set to constant airflow, lights at the proper intensity, camera settings verified, not assumed, audio levels tested with a spoken sentence, not a clap, backup recording running as well, and so on. We could go into more detail here, of course, but that's not part of this video. For now, we assume that we finish shooting our footage and we get to edit that as part of the production step. And I want to differentiate right away between editing and packaging. So editing is all the work that happens in DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, Final Cut, or whatever editing software you're using. Packaging, on the other hand, is a separate process that comes after and is done with other applications like Canva to create thumbnails, let's say. Also, editing and packaging run in sequence, not parallel, with the edit happening first. If you have someone who edits videos for you, you can skip that part, of course, and move forward. I still edit myself, so I have an SOP for that to make sure the essentials like lower thirds, B-roll, and transitions are included in the final product before I move on to the packaging phase. At this point, I obviously have a thumbnail idea or a draft from step 1 of the content pipeline. But once I'm done editing the video, I go back to it and make changes. Same goes for the title, the description, keywords, and the other things that are still relevant for YouTube today. Since I'm using vidIQ for most of the packaging work, I get scores for titles and thumbnail options to see how they should perform. I say should because it's not always accurate and I'm still figuring out what works and what doesn't work with every new video I put out these days. Let me know in the comments how you package your videos after editing to get good results. what workflow and tools you're using before distributing your content, which is what the final step of the 3 step pipeline is all about: distributing and publishing the content package. If you've done the first 2 steps, this one should be easy and, most importantly, fast. Upload to YouTube, add a title, thumbnail, and the other info in the advanced settings section, schedule, and done. Of course, the same applies to other platforms like LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. Depending where you publish your content, you probably have different workflows and formats for the video, but the overall content pipeline system still works. The ideation step may look different if we consider a reel instead of a long form video. Same goes for research, editing, and the final packaging. But the 3 steps, ideate, produce, and distribute, stay the same. That's one of the reasons why systems like this one are so powerful and can make the difference between a casual creator and someone who runs content creation like a business. If that's you, the pro who wants to run content creation with a business mindset, then there's one more part to the distribution step you should consider, and that's a post publication review. For YouTube specifically, I extract a few numbers from the analytics tab once the video has been live for a few days. CTR or click through rate, average view duration, and traffic source split. Now, CTR tells you whether the packaging is working. Below 4%, the title or thumbnail is not converting well. Average view duration tells you whether the content is holding attention. Below 40%, there's a hook or pacing issue. Traffic source split tells you whether SEO is connecting. If search traffic is under 20% of total views at 7 days, the keyword is not ranking. Based on those numbers, I make decisions for the next ideate cycle. And this is the point where the 3 step content pipeline turns from a straight line into a loop. The review part of step 3 influences the ideate step, where it's all about checking if the idea holds up to demand. What do I mean by that? The data you collect in the review directly informs which ideas from the idea database get turned into videos next month. A content cluster that's driving a 6% CTR and 55% average view duration gets more attention than a cluster that's running 2% CTR and 38% retention. If the pipeline would simply be a straight line at this point, it would be a production system. Now that we can turn it into a loop, we get a learning system, because with every cycle, the system gets more data. Every cycle, my production decisions are better informed. That's the compound effect on an operational level, by the way. I know it's a lot to take in, so let's bring it all together. 3 steps in sequential order: ideate, produce, distribute. With clear questions and tasks for each step, like editing comes before packaging in the production step, all of which turn chaotic content creation into a reliable and repeatable system for content creation that's run like a business. Because the real transformation is not becoming more creative, it's becoming more intentional. Now, here's the thing about implementing this: you don't need to build all 3 steps perfectly before you start using the content pipeline. Start with solid research of keywords next time, or write a checklist for recording sessions. Those are small improvements to a workflow you already have in place. The 3 step content pipeline is just a more structured version to help you go from idea to upload with a lot less chaos. And once the workflow becomes reliable, the next bottleneck is usually organization. But none of this matters, of course, if you don't manage your files properly in the first place. I'm talking folder structure, naming conventions, backup rules, and how to get that right with a few tweaks to your existing setup. The 3 step content pipeline is only as good as the foundation it's built on. So if you've ever spent 20 minutes searching for a clip or a file that should have taken 30 seconds to find, keep watching, because here's the thing: the content pipeline only runs as fast as you can find your assets. And at some point, being disorganized becomes being annoying and starts limiting how much content you can actually produce. Now, that's a problem if you want to be a content creator who runs a successful business. Because at some point, this organization like that stops being annoying and starts limiting how much content you can actually produce. So, what if I told you there are only 3 quick fixes you need to organize all the chaos on all your drives one more time and then be good for a long time. It took me years to figure out the best way to organize data and files in a way that they're an asset and don't turn into a time consuming nightmare when I want to create content. At the end of the day, it came down to three fixes I needed to implement. First one is a naming convention that works for video projects, admin files, and everything in between. Second is an easy way to structure folders so I can quickly find what I'm looking for. And third, a reliable backup system that lets me sleep at night because I know my data is actually secure. Now, if you want to be a content creator who runs an efficient business, the three-step file organization system is the foundation that'll help you stay focused on content creation instead of constantly recovering files from chaos, while the business part is almost running effortlessly behind the scenes. And definitely watch to the end because I'm going to show you the fastest way to use these three fixes today without having to spend weeks sorting through the last 5 years of documents. Because the real transformation here is not becoming more organized, it's becoming operationally reliable. Before we dive into fix one, the file naming convention, I want to make sure we actually agree on the problem. Because most creators treat file organization like optional housekeeping, something to do when you have to do it, something that doesn't actually affect the output quality of the work, when in reality it does in three different ways. There's the time cost for one. If you spend just 10 to 15 minutes a day searching for files because they're all over the place, that sums up to 60 to 90 hours per year, or somewhere between 1 to 2 work weeks. That's the compound effect at its worst. Tiny inefficiencies repeated like that every single day sneak up on you and turn creative work into burnout eventually. Personally, I can imagine a better use of my time than spending 2 work weeks searching for documents every year. And we're not even assuming that the time to look for files would actually increase over time because the overall number of files to go through grows with every project. So there's more to look for. Then there's the memory issue. Imagine you want to update a video from 6 months ago or repurpose it into a reel, a newsletter, or part of an online course. Doesn't even matter. And you can't even find the source file anymore. It's kind of hard to do if you don't remember which external hard drive the project folder is on. But the biggest problem by far with chaotic file management is that drives eventually fill up, and then the question becomes, what is safe to delete? So you either delete something important or you buy another drive to continue the same chaos just on a larger surface area, which means the business grows, but the infrastructure underneath stays the same. And there's a saying, conflict delayed is conflict multiplied. The same applies here. If you add more hard drives to an already chaotic system, all you get is chaos multiplied. With the three fixes I'm going to share with you, all these problems are eliminated completely and you stop wasting time. You create a system instead where your content becomes a reusable asset instead of disposable files. Fix one is to embrace a consistent way to name files, no matter if they're part of a video, a client project, or a business admin folder. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, not that again. That's so much extra work. Well, a naming convention does more than just organize files. It makes them searchable, which is precisely how you stop wasting 1 to 2 work weeks every single year. The name of a document already tells you what it is without opening it, which means your future self doesn't have to waste mental energy figuring out the past. And it's really not that complicated to come up with consistent and repeatable file names. There are only three parts to consider: date, description, and designator. Date is kind of self explanatory. I use year, month, day like this. The advantage with this is that it automatically sorts my files by month and day within any folder, and there are no exceptions to this. Every single file and file type I have within a folder has a date component. Description is next. That's the name like video underscore title or business license. I sometimes add an extra component to this, like the code INV for invoice or script for video script that I'm working on. This makes sense for documents of the same type. For instance, if I ever have to look up invoices, I don't want to go through my folder structure. I can simply search for INV and I get a whole list of invoices only. It's optional to work with these abbreviations, but in some cases, it actually makes a lot of sense. Okay, so path 3 is the designator then. For example, if I have multiple takes of the same video, then I can go and give them the designation take 01, take 02, and so on. For my Word files, I sometimes use V1, V2, V3 to use as a status designator, simply to indicate there are multiple versions of the same document. The advantage here is that I completely avoid using final as a designator. In my experience, final rarely stays final for very long, so I prefer the option with the versions. Another option is to use case-specific designations like these ones here. So I included the score in the file name of two thumbnail versions instead of V1 and V2 because let's face it, 6 months from now, I won't remember if thumbnail version 1 or 2 was the one I used without checking first. But by adding a case-specific designator, I can be reasonably sure that I use the one with the highest score without having to check a content plan or log into YouTube Studio. This sounds like an insignificant improvement at first, but multiplied across hundreds of creative decisions every year, it reduces friction a lot. Now that we have the file name figured out, we need to talk about an easy way to structure folders. That's the second fix if you want to get behind the scenes business organization in order as content creator. Because eventually your business becomes too complex to run from memory alone. Let's look at this zoomed out all the way first and start with the drive itself. Obviously, we can't have a cluttered desktop with individual files sitting on C drive. You can still use C drive, of course, but there are a few folders you need to get organized first. And the same is true for any other drive, external ones or if they're on a NAS. Chances are, if you make money with content creation or you intend to, you'll have a few admin documents like a business license or some sort of business plan. You definitely use a bunch of software and apps. You'll have social media channels where you publish your content, and there is the content itself, of course, videos, blog posts, and so on. So the big picture items are pretty similar, no matter if you're a YouTuber or a travel blogger. And this is why we can start with a few basic folders like admin, software, creative content, and maybe clients. As I said, it's irrelevant if you store your files locally on your computer or on an external hard drive in the cloud or on a NAS. Just think of the folder structure as a shipping container with crates and smaller boxes inside. The drive is the shipping container in this metaphor. The crates are your generic topic folders like business admin, software, videos, clients, and so on. And within these crates, you store smaller boxes, subfolders. For instance, in my topic folder for software, I have a subfolder for each subscription I currently use. And within each subfolder, there is another folder for invoices. In the topic folder videos, every video project has its own folder, and these folders are all structured the same way. So every time I'm looking for something specific, like the raw video files, I have a pretty good idea where to find them, simply because the structure repeats for each project. Now, you might think, hold on, what if something changes over time? Like I need to add something or a subfolder becomes irrelevant. Well, add a folder to the existing structure or delete it going forward. The point is that there's a structure in the first place, which can then be optimized over time, of course. I give you a practical example. I've recently transitioned from Premiere Pro to DaVinci Resolve for video editing. My video project folder template looked like this before. Folder 6 was called Premiere Pro for the first, let's say, 40 videos or so. Now I renamed it to DaVinci Resolve files. The overall drive organization is not impacted by this at all. And even within the project folder, I will still be able to find the master editing file in 6 months from now because it's in the same spot, just with a different label slapped on. But even if you add folder 08, 09, or 10 to that project folder, eventually, there is no issue. The integrity of the project folder is unaffected by that. You're modifying the package inside the crate, inside a container. neither the crate nor the container are affected by that. So even though it looks super structured and maybe a bit rigid at first glance, there is a lot of flexibility there that can be leveraged over time as the business or the projects grow. The goal is predictability for now, though. Like with the file naming convention, I usually stick to three rules when it comes to folder names. They start with a number. Operating systems sort alphanumerically by default, which means that 01 always comes before 03. That's a no brainer. It's the same using dates in file names for chronological sorting. So, rule 2 is then to keep folder names relatively short without compromising the information it needs to give me. And rule 3 is that I don't use spaces whatsoever, because spaces in file names can cause problems across different operating systems and cloud apps. Underscores are safe everywhere. So if we combine the file naming convention with the folder structure rules now, this is the result we get for a video project folder that already has files inside. Also, I have this as an empty template to copy for the next project. Now, one thing to note is that while I do have a B-roll folder within each project, I stopped using that for generic B-roll clips a while ago. I started reusing a lot of B-roll from different videos, and looking them up in old project folders was really time consuming. So I built a dedicated asset library for content, mainly split into B-roll footage and still images at this point. But I could also go and add my brand kit here with logos and links that I use often, or a sound library. Now, there's one more fix that we have to talk about before I show you the fastest way to use them today without having to spend weeks reorganizing the last 5 years of documents. But let me just say, I know this can feel overwhelming at this point. File names, folder structure, and so on. Here's the thing though, the creators who scale are the ones with systems that are documented and transferable. If your file system only makes sense to you, it cannot be handed off to someone else like a video editor, let's say. A system that cannot be handed off is not a business asset, it's a personal habit. And if your business depends entirely on your memory, it becomes very hard to scale without burning yourself out. Your time investment to build this structure is 2 to 4 hours max. The return is every week you save in the future by not searching for files in the chaos. But more importantly, it lowers the cognitive load again of running your business every single day. The same is true for all the other systems we talk about on this channel. So subscribe if you want to organize your business behind the scenes. All right, let's talk about Fix 3, the 3-to-1 backup system. File organization means nothing without a smart backup protocol in place. Because if we organize a single drive and it fails for some reason, the loss of data is worse than the chaos today. Okay? So the backup is insurance and peace of mind, plain and simple. As professionals, we don't just create content, we also want to protect the assets we create. And the more content we create, the worse any loss of data becomes in theory. The 3-to-1 backup protocol means you have 3 copies of every file stored on 2 different types of media, like a hard drive and a cloud, with one of those copies held off-site. In practical terms, you have a copy 1 on your working drive that you access all the time. So this is your laptop or your desktop. Everything you're actively producing lives here. Copy 2 lives on an external hard drive, where you sync contents to regularly. Not a manual drag and drop situation you have to remember, but an automated sync using a backup software. Weekly sync, pick a day, automated, forget about it. The only time you think about copy 2 is when copy 1 fails. Copy 3 is the backup of the backup in a way. Let's say a cloud service like Google Drive or OneDrive. Here you can sync once a month. This is the one offsite disaster level backup. House on fire, getting robbed, that sort of stuff. Copy 3 is a restoration point for worst case scenarios. You hope you never need copy 3, but if things go bad, this is what prevents a total reset. That's all there is to it. 3 copies on 2 different systems with 1 copy being located off-site. Right? So here's the big question I know a lot of you are asking now. Everything I've described so far makes complete sense for new content creators starting from scratch. But what about the 300 folders of chaos you already have on your 5 different hard drives? Do you spend the next 8 weekends or so reorganizing all of it? No, you don't. And I want to be clear about this because I've attempted the complete reorganization myself and spent entire weekends on it only to abandon the whole affair because the migration was too large to finish and it took too much time. Complete reorganization is not where you want to start because sustainable systems are built forward, not repaired backward, and especially not all at once. But there's a 3 step migration protocol you can use today. Step one is to build the big picture architecture now. A clean layer of folders like admin, software, videos, clients, including the subfolders for each one. And this is supposed to exist next to the old chaos for now. You're not touching the old stuff. Step two is to migrate your 5 most recent projects into the new structure. Not the stuff from 2 years ago, just the 5 most recent projects that you're working on. Then take those 5 projects, apply the correct folder structure, rename the files with the naming convention. And that's it. And then step three is to apply the system to everything you create from this point forward. So every new video you create, you copy the project template and add files where they belong. The idea with this approach is that the old chaos stays where it is and new order starts today. Going forward, the chaos gets smaller since projects use the organized structure. Every week, the proportion of your drive that is organized grows. And 6 months from now, the organized system becomes the default operating environment. In a year from now, the old chaos is almost entirely archive material you barely touch anyway. So, to sum this up, you don't clean a chaotic system by reorganizing everything at once. You install order at a point in time and let it propagate forward. That's how operational transformation actually happens in real businesses. So, if you're tired of running your creator business in reactive mode, download the free 1 page solopreneur operating system I created in the description below. It'll give you 6 steps to transform your work so your business feels faster and easier to manage behind the scenes. So let's bring it all together now. If you want to be a content creator who runs an efficient business, the 3 step file organization system is the foundation that'll help you focus on the content creation part you love, while your systems quietly support growth in the background. Fix 1: name files the same way with 3 components: date, description, and designator. Fix 2 is organize your folder structure. Your drive is like a shipping container with crates inside that hold smaller boxes. Use numbers for automatic sorting. And fix 3: have a backup protocol in place that follows the 3-to-1 rule. 3 copies on 2 different media types, with 1 copy being offsite. To create order fast, use the migration protocol, where you build the folder structure today and start with the first 5 projects. Then apply the system to everything going forward. And remember, the goal is not organization for the sake of being organized. The goal is reducing friction, protecting assets, and creating a business that scales easily in the future. But keep in mind that none of these fixes matter, of course, if you don't regularly maintain your systems. That's what we're going to talk about next. The content pipeline keeps you producing, the file system keeps you organized, but without an admin routine, both degrade over time, and most creators don't notice until they're already behind. If you're like most content creators, you won't fail because of one big mistake. You fail because of 100 small things you ignore while you're busy with nothing but content creation. Videos produced with zero data behind them, lost files, chaotic financial management behind the scenes. No planning ahead, that sort of thing. I started out just like that and constantly felt behind. Not because I was lazy, but because I never added proper admin work to my content business. I thought I just hustle harder and longer every day until I figured out that a 1 to maybe 2 hour block of admin per week is all it takes to not just get on top of things finally, but to even get ahead. That shift didn't just save me time, it changed the way I operate my business today because I stopped being the bottleneck and became the one who controls the system. So if you're constantly feeling behind creating content, this is the right video for you. I'll share my 3-step system that'll help you make better decisions about content, keep an eye on your business, admin, and plan ahead like a CEO. After this video, you won't just have another one of those productivity checklists. You'll have a system to run content creation as a business without being the one who is run by the business. If you're asking questions like, what video should I produce next? Where did those files go from the last reel I edited? Or have I really sent that invoice to the client last week? Chances are you're playing catch up. It's only logical to feel behind all the time, right? But that's a symptom and not the root cause. And with a 1 to 2 hour admin block every single week, we're looking to solve the root cause and not just patch up the symptoms. You can shoot from the hip and decide each week what content to create. There's nothing wrong with that if you're doing this for fun. But the moment you want to think of YouTube as part of your business, there needs to be some planning and longer term thinking. Same goes for your file and folder management. Businesses rarely implode because of one big thing that goes wrong. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. So, fixing little things like using proper file naming conventions pay dividends going forward. Even if in the moment it looks tedious to have a guy like me tell you that you should name your files properly. I can tell you from personal experience that those little things do matter in the long run because conflict delayed is conflict multiplied. Same goes for the financial management of the business. Sure, you can trust whatever tool you have to send invoices to clients automatically, but eventually you might have to just sit down and double check 500 transactions at the end of the year and bang your head against the wall, wondering why the number on your bank statement doesn't add up with your accounting software and why there's like 67 cents difference. Or you could just manage that stuff regularly upfront. Let's say as part of an admin session with 3 blocks that are non negotiable. The moment you install a system around these things, you stop being the victim of your business. Reactive becomes proactive. And that's the actual upgrade we're building here. Before we dive into these 3 blocks one by one, let's quickly define what this session is about and, more importantly, what it's not about. It's not a creative session for script writing, filming, or editing. No updating thumbnails either, because those are content production tasks. This is all about the behind the scenes operations or the maintenance, if you want to call it that. So, no, I'll use this time to quickly finish that upload package, or I'll fix this thumbnail that's been performing below standard. This admin session is all about keeping your system running, mainly by looking at the status and making adjustments to the machine if needed. And most importantly, it's a session that happens consistently, week after week, every month, not whenever I have the time for it. It's a fixed slot once a week because you want to make a habit out of this quickly. In total, we have 3 blocks to check. We'll do a content check, a money check, and we have a dedicated reset block where we essentially plan ahead for the next week. As part of the content check, we want to look into 3 aspects: the content pipeline, the analytics from YouTube specifically, or other platforms you use, and we want to check if we have to do a file cleanup and do that right away if needed. But let's start with the review of the content pipeline first. The purpose of building a content pipeline in the first place was to take you from idea to upload week after week without the chaos and the stress. And to do so by splitting up content creation into 3 steps: ideate, produce, and distribute. So you want to review if the content you create is moving through that pipeline properly, or if there are bottlenecks or any other issues you need to address on a systems level. For instance, I check my idea database and see how many of those are in the research stage or ready for production. Then I check what's currently in the production step, when it has to be finished, and if there are any issues associated with it. Like a video has been shot 4 weeks ago and it's still not edited. I want to understand what's going on there. For the distribution step, I want to make sure I double check that content for next week is ready to go. as in uploaded and scheduled if we're talking YouTube specifically. If that's not the case, I have a priority right there, especially if I do my admin session on a Friday afternoon. I want to make sure content is ready on Monday, or I need to spend the weekend on it. And this includes rechecking my content plan and seeing if it's really up to date. Yes, there's an SOP for this, of course, and it rarely happens that I forget, but double checking can't hurt, and it literally takes 30 seconds. Open content plan, see if all the columns are filled out, save and close. I also ask myself if I have enough content for the next few weeks. Personally, I like to have a buffer of at least 3 to 4 weeks, simply to avoid any stress should I get knocked out by the flu. At this point in the review, I'm no longer guessing what to work on next. That's a fundamentally different approach compared to doing whatever I feel like, and it compounds over time. If there's an issue in my review, like content not being scheduled for next week or missing entries in the content plan, I won't fix that right away. I make a note for the reset block we'll discuss in a minute. First, I want to continue with a quick analytics review. I do two things here. Once a week, I go to YouTube Studio and look at the numbers: CTR, average view duration, which video brought in the most views and subscribers, that sort of stuff. And once a month, I ask vidIQ to perform a full channel audit. I check if CTR of my last video is above 4%. If yes, I argue that the package is working. If no, I flag it for improvement. I also check if average view duration is above 40%. If that's a yes, I know the content is holding attention. If no, I flag it for improvement. Same goes for search traffic. Is it above 20% of total views after 7 days? If yes, SEO is connecting. If no, I flag it for improvement. Then I check views and total watch hours in the last 4 weeks to get a trend. I don't care so much about the absolute numbers in every single week. The trend is more important, and ideally it's going up. Now, if it's the end of a month, I also ask vidIQ to do a full channel audit, as I said before, mainly to see how it interprets the numbers and what suggestions it has to move forward. And while it's not super accurate all the time, it's one more data point to see the bigger picture. And this is where the shift from instinct driven to data driven creator happens. Basically, you stop making content because it feels right. You start making content because the numbers tell you it's the right thing to do. Before I move to the second admin block where I check my financials, I like to also do a brief file cleanup as well. It doesn't happen often, but every once in a while, I don't organize all the files in a video project. So I double check my last edits and put the B-roll in the B-roll folder if it needs to go there. You can ask why this would matter given that the video is scheduled or already published. Well, I think this is an investment for my future self. If in 2 months from now I have to go back and check something in this video folder, I do not want to spend half an hour sorting through all the chaos. I want to open a clean file structure and find what I'm looking for within 30 seconds. Same goes for any files I have sitting on my desktop or in my downloads folder. Are they named properly, following the naming convention? Do I need to keep them and move them into my drive somewhere else? Or can they just go to the trash? And I totally get that this looks like a lot of work, at least the way I talk about it. But think about this. How many files can you really accumulate in a single week? So it shouldn't take too long to check them and deal with them right away if they float around your desktop. I consider this a 2 to 5 minute task at best. So this is not hours of file organization. I'm at a point in my business where the folder structure and the naming convention is up to date and basically my default system. So I'm adding more order to an already organized system. It's not really extra work or effort because I'm not rebuilding a structure from scratch every single time. Now, if you're at the point where creating order is a higher priority, then definitely check out the 3-step file organization system. It's the foundation that'll help you focus on content creation while running everything properly behind the scenes. And while the business part is almost running effortlessly by itself. A bonus tip is to also check automatic backups every once in a while if you follow the 3-to-1 backup process. See if they're actually performing well. I have this set up through my NAS on a weekly schedule, and I get email confirmations that the backup ran automatically. But if you sync data to a Google Drive or anywhere else, it might make sense to check if the backup was done properly, like once a month or so. This never feels like an urgent task, of course, but it's part of running a stable system regardless. And we're talking about 2 minutes of time investment once a week that will potentially save you days or weeks of rebuilding files and folders from scratch if you lose it all and your last backup was a year ago. That being said, if you're like most creators, you don't need more motivation. You need a better operational system, not just for YouTube, but for the behind the scenes business aspects, especially if you're a one man or a one woman show. That's exactly why I put together a free one page solopreneur operating system template. It gives you a simple structure for running your business and content alongside each other with more clarity and less chaos. Link is in the description below. Okay, so the purpose of the second admin block or money check is to get a brief update on the financial health of the business. I know many creators like to focus on revenue here. How much money did their business or the channel make this week, this month, this year? And while that's important, there are other aspects that matter a lot more than revenue alone. For instance, I like to log all my purchases at least once a month in my accounting software and download any subscription bills I get on a regular basis. I could totally automate this step, but at the point I am, I want to keep an eye on things. And having the manual step here of downloading a bill, adding it to a folder, helps me keeping an eye on it. And again, we're talking like 5 bills per month max. And this is not a high volume task I spend 5 hours on. So 5 minutes at best to make sure my accounting software is up to date and the bills are properly copied into folders. When it comes to clients or online sales, I also want to double check that the invoice went out and they got a receipt for their purchase. To me, this is part of acting like a professional business owner and an investment in customer trust. It just makes sense to double check this, even if your sales provider like Stripe can do the whole thing automated today. Last but not least, I check my overall account status. What's the ratio of money coming in versus the money going out? Am I overpaying for a service? What subscription payment is coming up next? Should I continue using that service or switch to another one? Those are the questions I ask myself. Not every week, of course, but at least once a month, simply to have the feeling that I keep an eye on things and big upcoming payments don't catch me off guard. Once this block becomes a habit, something starts to feel different. You stop feeling like a freelancer who's hoping the money works out and start operating like a business owner who knows exactly where they stand. And that's a big thing, that's a big shift. All right, the final block of the admin session is to reset and to plan ahead for next week. That's probably the most important block to stay ahead of things. What tickets are open, why, and what to do about it. I usually start by checking which tickets are actually open. There's always something that didn't get finished by Friday afternoon. And I have a look at those tasks to see if they're still relevant going forward. If yes, I have to decide how to reschedule them depending on my priorities. And this is where checking my big picture strategy comes in. While I tend to operate with a daily and weekly plan to keep momentum going, my big picture strategy is what informs most of my work I do in the first place. So I look at this strategy regularly to see if I'm still on track. As I said, things change and business is unpredictable to some degree. So I want to make sure whatever I do today is still a step in the right direction. That way, I avoid doing things that feel like busy work in the moment, but will take me into a totally different direction I don't want to go to. Like all the other blocks and steps that we've discussed, I don't spend serious time here. 5 minutes at best. Is the work I did this week a step in the right direction? Does it get me closer to achieving my big picture plan? Yes, no. And depending on my answer, I plan tickets and commitments for next week. That's it, which is the final step in the reset block. I literally organize my tickets on a little whiteboard I have sitting on my desk these days. As I said in previous videos, I can't work with Asana or other tools and have digital Kanban boards within an app somewhere. I need to see my tickets right in front of me every single day. And while it's neither digital nor automated, it works just fine for me. The point is, I plan ahead for a few days with simple paper tickets. And when life has other plans, I rearrange them as I need to. But at the end of the day, I have my workload scheduled for the next few days. Now, to get the most out of my admin session, aside from planning a few days ahead, I follow three rules we should talk about to finish this up. They increase the chance I stay on topic and I don't follow this urge to go back to editing or publishing more content all the time. Here's what I've learned the hard way: the session itself isn't the transformation, the rules for the session are. And without them, the system simply turns back into chaos. So, rule one is no creative work during the session. Why does that matter? Well, chances are the moment I start my content pipeline review, I find things I want to fix. You know, a thumbnail here, a tag there, keyword adjustments, and whatnot. Whatever it is, fixing it right away might only take a few minutes. So, why not do it right away? Well, the problem with that is that it's a shift to creative work which comes at the cost of stopping admin work. And before I know it, I spend 2 hours redoing a thumbnail instead of checking the status of my business. And what makes this dangerous is that I probably won't go back after to admin, so it'll just stay unfinished. Rule two that helped me a lot to be more businessy about content creation. Admin sessions happen on the same day every week. That way, I can plan ahead and schedule creative deep work clusters around it without compromising one or the other. And rule three, the final one, is to keep it simple. By that, I mean not overdo the admin part of the systems review or the business review. If you're like me, your first instinct is probably to say, hey, wait, I should add more checks to the review and do this and do that to get more comprehensive data. But here's the problem with that. If you run a 4 to 6 hour session for this, you'll skip it because it's just too much information to take in. And the longer the session takes, the louder the voice is. You should edit videos right now. So the shorter you can keep admin and maintenance work, the better. Once you get started with this, the biggest thing that'll change is decision quality. You can stop making content decisions from memory and instinct and start making them based on current data. You know what you're deciding about. And the second thing this changes is your overall stress level. A lot of stress these days comes from being in a reactive mode all the time. Looking at the current state of things and then planning ahead turns that into a more proactive approach. Your to do list doesn't get any smaller, but it becomes clearer in terms of priorities. Call it having more control, if you will. And that's not just an operational improvement, that's the difference between running a business and being run by one. Most creators never cross that line, not because they lack talent or motivation, because we all have that enough, but because they never consider the systems to support it. I think by far the biggest change is that running a weekly admin session will improve your content creation, though, because you review the analytics and make the decisions based on that, which means over time your thumbnails improve, your titles get better, and keyword clusters get more precise. None of that would happen if you only focus on creating more content all the time. The goal should be to produce better content over time. And to do that, you need to approach content creation with business thinking. One admin session per week can literally do that for you. But none of the reviews and the planning steps matter if you don't have a clue how to run your channel like a business in the first place. And that's why I made a whole video series on how to apply systems thinking in the solo business context. From getting all the processes out of your head to compiling proper standard operating procedures and delegating work so you turn from stressed out content creator to a real business owner fast. So check it out now, and I definitely see you there. Thanks for watching. See you next time.